Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about why growth stage companies sometimes get legally stuck. We talked about capital structure, we talked about why we'll fix it later becomes so expensive. Today I want to talk about where all those problems actually live, your operating agreement. Most founders treat it like something they've signed but never really look at again, but buyers and investors don't see it that way. It's one of the first documents they review because it tells them two critical things: who actually controls the company and how hard it's going to be to get a deal done. And I'm thinking again about the company I've mentioned in the last couple of videos. Strong founder, real momentum. But when the financing stalled and we started digging into the structure, many of the issues traced back to the same place: the company's governance documents. Let me walk you through the 4 governance issues I see most often. Fourth, unclear decision-making authority. If major actions like financings, acquisitions, or a sale require multiple approvals or even unanimous consent, deals slow down quickly, even when the business itself is strong. In this company, certain decisions required going back to early investors for approvals. The founder could move quickly, but the documents requiring additional steps, and that kind of friction becomes very visible when new investors are evaluating the company. Third place, minority rights that block transactions. Investor protections often make sense when a company is young. Anti-dilution protections, liquidation preferences, consent rights. But if those provisions weren't designed to scale with the company, they can quietly become obstacles later. In this case, governance provisions have been written anticipating a different investor structure than the one actually developed. Those investors never materialized, but the provisions stayed. And that meant major decisions required approvals that slowed everything down. Second place this shows up is when the documents no longer match how the company actually operates. Every company develops informal ways of doing things, side understandings, handshake agreements, practical workarounds. But buyers and investors don't underwrite assumptions. They underwrite documents. So when the paperwork doesn't match how the company actually runs, uncertainty creeps in, and uncertainty always slows deals. And the biggest issue I see is dispute and exit provisions that were never pressure tested. What happens if an investor wants out? What happens if founders disagree? What happens if the company needs to restructure ownership? If those mechanics aren't clear in the operating agreement, the company doesn't have a roadmap when things change. And in the company we've been talking about, when the financing stalled because of the IP issues, governance suddenly mattered a lot. The board was nervous, the company needed to stabilize, and every structural adjustment required navigating documents that had never been written for that situation. The company survived, but the process was much harder than it needed to be. Here's the reality most founders don't hear early enough. Governance issues rarely kill deals outright. What they do is slow deals down. They complicate negotiations, and they shift leverage, often at the worst possible moment. Strong companies need governance structures that reflect how the business actually operates today, not just how it looked when the company was first formed. If you're preparing for growth, raising capital, or thinking about an exit, and you haven't revisited your operating agreement in years, that's worth addressing now while you still have choices. Because good governance doesn't slow deals. Unclear governance does. We've put together a deal readiness checklist that walks through the key governance issues founders should review before a deal is on the line. Click the link in the bio and download it. It's a simple step that can protect a lot of value and keep deals moving.